everyone. Welcome back to our podcast, where we make learning English fun and practical. I'm Sophia, and today we have a special episode just for you, our listener Q&A. We're going to answer your burning questions about English grammar, vocabulary, and usage. And with me, as always, is my co-host, Sebastian. How are you, Sebastian?
Hi, Sophia. I'm doing great and really excited about today's episode. We've received so many interesting questions from our listeners, and I can't wait to dive in. So make sure to stay till the end because we've got a lot of useful tips and insights to share. And don't forget to leave your comments and reviews. We love hearing from you.
All right, let's jump into our first question. This one comes from Emily in Canada. She asks, what is the difference between affect and effect? Great question, Emily. This is a common confusion.
Absolutely, Sophia. So, affect is a verb that means to influence something. For example, the weather can affect your mood. On the other hand, effect is a noun that refers to the result of a change. For example, the new law had a positive effect on the economy.
That's right. Just remember, affect is an action and effect is the end result. Let's move on to our next question. This one is from Ahmed in Egypt. He asks, can you explain the difference between say and tell?
Great question, Ahmed. Say and tell are both used to report speech, but they're used differently. You use say when you don't mention who you are speaking to. For example, she said she was tired, but you use tell when you do mention the person you're speaking to. For example, she told me she was tired.
Exactly. Think of it this way. You say something and you tell someone something. Let's keep the ball rolling with a question from Maria in Brazil. She asks, what are some common phrasal verbs and how do we use them?
Phrasal verbs are a big part of everyday English, Maria. Here are a few common ones. Pick up, to lift something, or to learn something new. Example, can you pick up that book for me? Or, she picked up Spanish quickly? Run out of, to have no more of something. Example, we ran out of milk. Break down, to stop working or to become very upset. Example, my car broke down. Or, he broke down after hearing the news. Give up to stop trying. Example, don't give up on your dreams.
Phrasal verbs can be tricky, but practice makes perfect. Our next question comes from Lee in China. She asks, what is the difference between few and a few?
Great question, Lee. Few and a few both mean a small number, but they have different connotations. Few suggests not many and often has a negative tone. For example, few people attended the meeting implies that not enough people attended. A few, however, suggests a small but sufficient number. For example, a few people attended the meeting, or implies that the number of attendees was satisfactory.
That's a subtle but important difference. Moving on, we have a question from Juan in Mexico. He asks, how do you use since and for with the present perfect tense?
Good question, Juan. We use since to indicate the starting point of an action that continues to the present. For example, I have lived here since 2010. We use for to indicate the duration of an action. For example, I have lived here for 10 years.
Very useful tips, Sebastian. Let's tackle another question. This one is from Priya in India. She asks, can you explain the difference between good and well?
Sure, Priya. Good is an adjective and is used to describe nouns. For example, she is a good student. Well is an adverb and is used to describe verbs. For example, she sings well.
That's a common mistake, but easy to fix once you know the rule. Next, we have a question from Olga in Russia. She asks, what are some tips for improving English pronunciation?
Great question, Olga. Here are some tips. Listen and mimic. Try to imitate native speakers by listening to podcasts, watching movies, and repeating what you hear. Record yourself. This helps you hear your own pronunciation and make adjustments. Practice tongue twisters. These are fun and can help improve your articulation. For example, She sells seashells by the seashore.
Fantastic tips, Sebastian. And to our listeners, keep those questions coming. We love helping you out. Let's move on to another great question from Pablo in Spain. He asks, what is the difference between who and whom?
That's a classic question, Pablo. Who is used as a subject in a sentence, meaning the person who performs the action. For example, who is coming to the party? Whom is used as an object in a sentence, meaning the person who receives the action. For example, whom did you invite to the party? A simple trick is to answer the question with he or him. If he fits, use who. If him fits, use whom.
That's a really helpful trick, Sebastian. Our next question comes from Amina in Morocco. She asks, can you explain the difference between bring and take?
Of course, Amina. Bring implies movement towards the speaker. For example, can you bring me the book? Take implies movement away from the speaker. For example, please take this letter to the post office.
Great explanation, Sebastian. Now, we have a question from Rina in Japan. She asks, what are some tips for expanding my English vocabulary?
Excellent question, Rina. Here are some tips. Read regularly. Books, articles, and blogs expose you to new words in context. Use flashcards. Apps like Anki can help you memorize new words. Learn a word a day. Try to use the new word in sentences throughout the day. Engage in conversations. Practicing with others helps reinforce new vocabulary.
Those are fantastic tips, Sebastian. Let's take another question from Luca in Italy. He asks, what is the difference between lend and borrow?
Great question, Luca. Lend means to give something to someone temporarily. For example, can you lend me a pen? Borrow means to take something from someone temporarily. For example, can I borrow your pen? Can I?
That's a very clear explanation, Sebastian. Our next question comes from Fatima in Saudi Arabia. She asks, how can I improve my English writing skills?
That's a wonderful question, Fatima. Here are some tips. Read a lot. Exposure to different writing styles can improve your own writing. Write daily, practice makes perfect. Try keeping a journal or blogging. Edit your work. Reviewing and correcting your writing helps you learn from mistakes. Seek feedback. Get feedback from teachers or native speakers.
Great tips, Sebastian. Now, let's answer a question from Hugo in France. He asks, what is the difference between each and every?
Good question, Hugo. Each refers to individual items in a group, one at a time. For example, each student received a book. Every refers to all items in a group considered together. For example, every student in the class passed the exam.
That's a great distinction, Sebastian. Our next question comes from Zara in Turkey. She asks, what are some tips for understanding English idioms?
Understanding idioms can be tricky, Zara. Here are some tips. Learn in context. Understanding how idioms are used in sentences helps remember their meanings. Use mnemonic devices. Create associations to remember idioms. Practice with examples. Make your own sentences using idioms. Engage with native speakers. This helps you learn idioms in natural conversation.
Those are very helpful tips, Sebastian. Let's tackle another question from Raj in India. He asks, can you explain the difference between farther and further?
Absolutely, Raj. Farther refers to physical distance. For example, my house is farther from the school than yours. Further refers to metaphorical or abstract distance. For example, we need to discuss this further.
That's a great explanation, Sebastian. Our next question comes from Mia in Australia. She asks, what are some tips for mastering English grammar?
Great question, Mia. Here are some tips. Study regularly. Set aside time each day to study grammar rules. Practice with exercises. Grammar exercises help reinforce what you learn. Read widely. Exposure to correct grammar usage in books and articles helps. Seek feedback. Get feedback from teachers or native speakers to improve.
Those are excellent tips, Sebastian. Let's answer one last question for today. This one is from Hannah in Germany. She asks, what are some strategies for improving English listening skills?
Great question, Hannah. Here are some strategies. Listen to podcasts and audiobooks. Exposure to different accents and speeds helps. Watch movies and TV shows. This provides context and visual cues. Practice active listening. Focus on understanding the main ideas and details. Engage in conversations. Practicing with others improves your listening skills.
Fantastic strategies, Sebastian. And to our listeners, keep those questions coming. We love helping you out.
As we approach the end of our podcast, we'd like to share a special announcement. We're launching a monthly contest. Submit a short video of you asking an English question and speaking in English. The best video will be featured in our next podcast, and the winner will receive a special prize.
That's right, Sebastian. We can't wait to see your creative entries. Don't forget to use the present perfect tense in your videos to practice what we've learned today.
And that's a wrap for today's episode. I hope you found these answers useful and enjoyed learning something new. If you did, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and share this podcast with your friends. Your feedback means the world to us, so leave a review and let us know what topics you'd like us to cover next.
Stay curious, keep practicing, and see you in the next episode.